Dark Rising Studios, and today I'm going to teach you how to do a leaf stitch. This herringbone style leaf stitch is really fun to do and can create lots of different types of leaves. I'll be sharing a few tips and tricks for how to work leaves that are nice and straight, leaves that are curved, leaves that are thin and wide. I'm really excited to share this one with you. Let's get going. I'm going to teach you how to stitch a herringbone style leaf stitch with these 3 leaves. I'm going to begin with this nice straight one in the center so you can get the basic technique. Begin by bringing your needle up through the tip of the leaf, pulling it all the way through, and then reinserting your needle at the tip of the line that goes up the center of the leaf. So from the tip of the leaf to the end of this line is going to be your first stitch. From here, you're going to alternate stitches side to side. I'm going to start by bringing my needle up on either side of this first stitch, right on that outer edge of the leaf, so that line that makes the outline shape of the leaf. Bring your needle back down, either in the very same hole where your first stitch ended in the fabric, or just very slightly below it. Pull your thread through, and that's stitch number 2. Now, since I went to the right side of my center first stitch, I'm going to now go to the left side. I'm going to add another stitch in the exact same way here, bringing my needle up just very close to where I brought it up for my first stitch on that edge line, and then reinserting it just ever so slightly below where I reinserted my last stitch on the center line. And the whole time I stitch with this technique, I'm going to be alternating back and forth, right to left, continuing to add stitches. Sometimes in these first few stitches, your stitches are going to want to sit a little bit on top of one another. Some of this is okay, but if you can kind of gently coax them off of one another with your needle as you go, that's best. As you continue to add stitches side to side, alternating between right and left, you'll see that your stitches are going to start to create a sort of V shape, and they will also be creating a seam or a line down the center of the leaf where that line is drawn into the pattern. This is exactly what you want. You want to find that V shape with your stitches and then try to maintain it as you work your way down the leaf. If you're having trouble getting your V shape to open up to a nice moderately wide angle, try placing your stitches just slightly further away from one another on the outside edge of the leaf, so where you're bringing your needle up through the fabric and keeping them a little bit closer together along that center seam line. Doing this for a few consecutive stitches will help widen out your V. If you're having the opposite problem, where your V is starting to open up too wide and get flattened out, try keeping the stitches when you bring them up through the edge of the leaf closer together and bringing them down a little bit further along that center seam as you reinsert your needle back down. If you end up with a little bit of a gap in between your stitches, maybe you've placed a stitch too far apart from a previous one and you have some fabric showing through, you can always go back and add in an extra stitch to fill that gap. Just make sure that you use your fingernail or the side of your needle to smooth the stitches down so that they look like they go neatly together once you're finished. As you reach the base of your leaf, your stitches generally become pretty small. Only continue adding stitches until the space in the leaf is filled. Sometimes you might end up filling one side of the leaf before the other, and that's okay. Just fill in whatever side is remaining with as many stitches as you need to until it's done. Sometimes you'll come across a leaf that's curved, like this one. Curved leaves have one side of the leaf that is longer, so one edge up here that's longer, and a bottom edge down here that is shorter. So it's going to take more stitches to fill in this top half of the leaf than it will to fill in the bottom half of the leaf. We'll also need to gently change the angle of our stitches as we work to go along with the changing angle of the leaf. Here's how to do that. Bring your needle up through the leaf tip and reinsert it at the top of that center line, just like we did on the straight leaf. You'll continue alternating stitches side to side, but we're going to need to add in some extra stitches on that upper, longer edge. One of the techniques I like to use here is called stitch tucking. So I'm going to bring my needle up through this outside edge, but instead of stretching it all the way to that center line, I'm actually going to tuck the end of my stitch a little bit away from that line under my previous stitch on this side. So I'm still having an angled stitch here, gently changing the angle of my stitches to fan out across the top edge of this leaf, but I'm not adding extra bulk by that center seam line. After tucking one stitch, I'm actually going to add one more stitch on this side that stretches all the way to that center line. So I'm doing two stitches over here, only one of which is reaching to the center line. Now I'll return to the other side and add just one stitch over here. As you work your way through a curved section of a leaf, you'll want to use this stitch tucking technique to gently change the angle of your stitches. Once you get through the curved part of the leaf and the leaf is just a straight shot down to the end, you can just do alternating one stitch on each side. I only need to tuck stitches on the side that has the longer edge of the leaf. So I'm going to go ahead and tuck another stitch here, adding one stitch that's hidden with the end underneath my previous stitch on this side, and then a second stitch that reaches all the way to that center line. As you do this stitch tucking technique, it's easy for some stitches to sit too much on top of one another, so make sure you use your fingernail or the side of your needle to gently pull them apart and make sure each stitch sits as much in its own place as possible. Remember, a tucked stitch always comes up in its very own new spot in the fabric, just like you're starting a new regular stitch, but it's just that reinsertion point that gets tucked under the previous stitch. This leaf has a pretty strong curve, so I'm using stitch tucking on every stitch on this side. So every time I work a stitch on this side, I'm going to use stitch tucking techniques all the way until I get to the apex of the curve, that point right in the middle of our leaf. Some leaves are a little bit more rounded. They're shorter with a short center line. And on these leaves, it can be a little bit tricky to achieve and maintain that nice even V shape. So let's work through a leaf that looks like this, and I'll show you some techniques I use for that. To get to that nice V point in this leaf, you're going to want to keep your stitches on the center line closer together while allowing the points where you bring your needle up through the outside edge to be just slightly further away as you work through this first part of the leaf. Don't leave so much space between your stitches that you can see visible fabric in between. Just think about giving them a tiny bit more room to breathe between one another. Another way to widen out your stitches and fan them to make that V shape is, of course, to use the stitch tucking technique that we talked about on the curved leaf. Since this leaf is straight and it's not curving to one side or the other, you'll want to make sure to tuck stitches evenly on either side. If you tuck a stitch on the left, make sure you also tuck one on the right side. That way the stitches will fan out evenly. I really love stitching with a herringbone style leaf stitch like we've done here. I hope that the tricks and techniques I've shown you allow you to stitch leaves in any shape and size that you come across. You can use leaf stitch to create so many different types of leaves. I've used them on these small pink leaves here and on these more regular looking gold leaves. In this design, I've done a really cool technique where I've done 2 different layers of leaf stitch. I've stitched first this inside layer, working to fill the center of the leaf, and then I've added this outside layer afterward. You can do so many cool things with a herringbone style leaf stitch, and I can't wait to see what you create. Thanks for stitching with me.